people are giving donations to scholarship organizations or other kinds of tax credits among 17 different states. Colorado is not one of those. But in our citizens' budget, Ben DeGrow, my counterpart at the, or my colleague at the Independence Institute, wrote a piece on the amount of money that we could save in Colorado by implementing a tax credit program.
Meaning allowing people who want to donate money for scholarships to basically rescue kids who are in failing public schools.
That's right, yeah. And over a 3-year period, we could save $21.3 million in Colorado just by allowing people to receive these tax credits.
It's very easy for special interest to obfuscate these facts. You have to have a sense of history. Go back to 1950. Who was the #1 system in the world? The United States. What was the most democratic system? The United States. What was the most cost-effective? The United States. So the answer to your question, you really have to say, what is it we did between 1950
what was the big mistake? What was the big error?
Well, for one time, at that time, there were only 2 schools of education in the entire country. We didn't get teachers then. Somehow the country stumbled along for 300 years without schools of education.
I mean, talking about people going to college and saying, I'm going to go get a degree in being an educator. Sure. Before that, how did we hire teachers if they didn't come from some higher ed center of education?
I had a liberal arts degree in history, and I was hired to teach history, and I did. I never took an education credit. At that time, it was thought, well, why would you want to do that? We want someone who knows something about history. So you have to look at what's happened, the way that there has been curricular sprawl. Do you know that at a time when 1/4 of our entering freshmen need remedial reading, we've reduced the time of instruction in reading by 30%. 30% less classroom instruction on reading at a time the kids are failing in reading. Why did that happen? Because a lot of people had a lot of really nice ideas. An elective for this, an elective for that, bicycle safety, dental hygiene, sex education. We separated ourselves from the rest of the world. The rest of the world is still doing, to use an old-fashioned phrase, back to the basics. They feel if a child can read, can write, and can compute, good things can happen. If you can't do those things, then nothing is going to save you. Not 2 Olympic swimming pools are going to save you.
As we get into the waning minutes of this, let me see if we can move from the mistakes to either the successes or some of the solutions. I know that you've been a big champion of giving parents more education themselves, not only on how to be good parents of students, but also how to choose schools. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, I think it's really up to parents to demand more choices so that they can choose the schools that are going to be best for their kids. We have a website at the Independence Institute that can be found at www.schoolchoiceforkids.org. And on that website, all of the private schools in the state, all the public schools, every kind of option that's out there, is including online schools, are on the website. I hope that other states need to do. A lot of
parents don't even know that they have these choices of charter schools, of online schools, of perhaps private schools, depending where they live in the country, and being able to get a voucher or a tax credit or a scholarship. There are choices, and they need to be armed with this information. It's one area of our economy where we choose our cars, we choose our food, we choose our doctors, at least for a little while longer. And on this one, we don't seem to want to choose our schools, but we can, largely.
Yeah, parents rely too much on the government's decision to say, you live in this neighborhood, this is the house you can afford, therefore you're going to go to this school. Well, that's just not so in Colorado, but it's still more.
Parents don't bring their kids to the nearest doctor. Maybe they shouldn't always bring them to the nearest school.
That's correct.
All right, talk to me about some of the solutions.
The central insight in this policy brief is that though we historically have not thought of it that way, education is an entitlement program, exactly like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Yet we don't think of it that way. Yet in terms of its size, scope, and metastasizing costs, it is the largest and the most dangerous entitlement. We are seeing around the world now entire national economies on the verge of collapse over what? One word, entitlements. And now that is what is looming for us. We have to reform our entitlement system in education. If pensions and benefits are unsustainable for public workers and every other calling, you have to recognize it's exactly the same with education. High marks to the unions, who year after year were very good at building these things in. And if money was endless, that would be okay. So reforming entitlement. The other thing, and local school districts can do this, it isn't just the state. I mean, education is the lion's share of every local budget. The class size, that is the philosopher's stone. That's where the pot of gold is. But you have to get your mind right, as they said in Cool Hand Luke, to do that.
Do you think it's really possible to sell the American public that we need to pay our teachers more but double class sizes, that we're going to need to send people, hire people based on what they know, not where they were educated as a teacher, and have more kids in the classroom? This is a tough, tough sell.
Start by telling the people the truth. A poll a few years ago asked American citizens, what do teachers make? And they said, the average, $33,000. It was actually $47,000. How much it cost to average to educate a student for a year? Answer came back, $2,000 a year. It was $9,000 at the time. If you give people the facts, if they say, you're saying that all of the research opposes class size reduction? Yeah, well, I guess we don't want it.
What, from your point, if there was a silver bullet or anything close, what's the one thing we need to know?
Well, I think that everyone needs to know that this is a time for legislators and other policymakers to take bold steps to only focus on what is working on education and cut out the rest.
In other words, with our economy, we can't afford to mess around any longer. Pam Benigno, thank you so much. Bill Moloney, thank you. And thank you. I tell you what, why don't you check out our webpage? That's independenceinstitute.org. Tell a friend, and we'll see you next week.